What exactly has been the effect of the fuel subsidy removal, the volatility in the FX market? How has it impacted the operational efficiency of the mobility sector? Speak to us from that operational perspective.
Thank you very much. So, when you look at the mobility space, right, two things drive demand. The means of the riders or the customers and availability, that's supply. So once that announcement came, the first thing that took a hit was availability, supply. Drivers woke up, suddenly price of fuel went from less than 100 naira per liter to above 100 naira per liter. I myself witnessed fueling my car. My price point went from about 20,000 naira to about 60 something thousand naira. Bear in mind, drivers have been dealing with the high cost of maintenance of their vehicles. Now, if you add the volatility in foreign exchange to that, so you have a double whammy. So the drivers took the first hit, and if we observe, there was a bit of rearrangement. In that period, it was extremely difficult for you to get rides. What was happening? These guys were saying to themselves, this thing is not making any sense. What I'm earning is not enough to cover my cost point. Then it took some time for the operators, all of us had to sit down. Do you increase price in a proportionate manner? Do you stay? Do you subsidize? Do you provide incentives and all of that? Ultimately, we increased prices. Now, means people's disposable income did not increase in a direct proportion to how those prices went up. So you had a conundrum. Price, your cost point is increasing. The man that needs to pay for it, his disposable income is not increasing, yet he has to move. So what we saw was a sharp decline in demand for mobility. However, the need to move did not necessarily stop.
Okay.
People recalibrated, readjusted, and sometimes it feels like our economy is sort of like shielded from there is a level of resilience built into our economy that makes us bounce back from some of these setbacks, because in another 2 to 3 months post removal of subsidy, that demand started climbing back up again. And all thanks to Dirty December, it went through the roof. So I'd say both ways, both supply and demand, drivers and riders both took a big hit as a result of our first subsidy removal.
You once talked about in one of your previous messages or previous things you've talked about, your previous posts. You talked about pooling. Was it about carpooling? How did you operators manage people who desired now not to ride by themselves or wanted to ride with friends and family?
So basically, people became more friendly, that's all.
Okay.
All our pride, everything dropped, right? And then, those days when you can easily someone can just call you and then you just get in your car and just move. I remember I used to be, when I'm walked up, I would get in my car and just drive.
All right.
Now when I'm walked up, I stay where I am because the cost of driving will make me more worked up. Okay. So, like I said, people readjusted and recalibrated what their priorities were, right? People started joining themselves to move from one point to the other. Also, you would see a bit of shift in the behavior of consumers on the different e-hailing service providers. There was a sudden preference for price points that were perceived as cheaper, right? So, I mean, we change basically, and we embrace it once there is an opportunity or the right incentive for us to embrace change.
The money bag says I have it. The infrastructure people say they have it. What's proof that there's a future if they bring in all their resources? You've done this before. What are your numbers looking like, and what do you project will be the numbers?
So in the last 1 year, I could say to you that Lagos alone did about $120 million
in 12 months.
Yeah. And bear in mind, the data available shows that there are about 14 million people moving daily. What I'm saying to you is, from the ride-hailing subset of that 14 million people moving daily, it's just close to about 100,000 people. So daily, between Uber, Bolt, InDrive, LagRide, and all the e-hailing service providers, we're probably moving, say, between 100 to 105,000 people, right?
Daily.
Daily. But Lagos, this access from Aja to Marina on any given day moves over 1 million people. So if you convert all of the assets moving these people to EVs, that needs to be charged by the infrastructure man, that needs to be funded by the money bag. I do believe that his assertion is true. There is money in that space. There is so much money in that space. The problem is that it's fragmented.
Okay.
Just like he has said, we do not have enough products out there to put all of this together, because if we aggregate that demand, if we aggregate the protocols driving all of these services, it is easy for them to have a line of sight to data, and they would be able to make better and informed decisions, right? Let me give you an example. So I was privy to see the books of a transport company operated by state government. They had over 1,000 buses. For a full year, their entire gross revenue was less than 500 million naira. Gross. With 1,000 buses. On Lagos Ride with 300 cars, we were doing that in a month. So, if that data was available to the decision makers, where would you put your money? Just like I said, it's about the yield. So, the absence of data or actionable data is making, we are taking half-wise decisions, and we are unable to extract the value from the ecosystem as we should.
The economic power of the movers or users or riders is not being considered in this conversation. With all of these investments, how do you help the riders?
First, I think they need to change their mind and around some of the biases that they hold. I'll give an example. You did mention that rideshare is not new, right? I mean, we ran an experiment, right, doing rideshare with LagRide when we started out, and the feedback was quite shocking. People were averse to rideshare because in their mind, when I order a ride, Nami get the car. The driver is meant for me. And they started bringing up issues of, oh, safety, this and that. And I'm like, hold up. This is coming from the same set of people who used to jump in a bus. When you get in a keke marwa, you are ride sharing. For crying out loud, when you are on a flight, you are sharing. The difference is just that we didn't brand it. We didn't call it rideshare, so it looked imported. Rideshare is native to us. I dare say it was when I came to Lagos for the first time that I actually see people sit alone inside a taxi and pay ridiculous sums for it. Where I come from,
You are plenty.
we are plenty.
You'll be many.
Now collabo we did do.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yes.
Right? So we need to first and foremost step away from that.
Yeah.
And when we saw that, we went back into our strategy session to say, look, this is a perception and it is real to these people. We need to figure out a way to respond to this and build products that address that particular perception so that what you're trying to do, it doesn't get truncated. The second thing also is we also need to start thinking about creating businesses and products in the mobility value chain that can meet people where they are. And I will bring the example of the brands in the FMCG sector. I remember growing up, and for you to buy peak milk, then it had to be that big stuff or the condensed one. And a lot of families could not afford that until Cowbell showed up and started selling
Milk in the sachet.
exactly. So single consumption, single service, and you're good. And for the longest of times, I observed how a lot of those brands in that space, they did not jump on that bandwagon until they started losing money. Now today, everybody has one form of sachet or the other. So I think first, it rests on us to educate customers, users, as to some of the beliefs and the biases that they hold. And then we also need to be deliberate in curating business models and products that can actually meet them where they are today.
Mobility, it goes down to two-wheelers, three-wheelers, for instance. What is the future of that looking like in this climate that we're in now? And do you see it as something that will actually attract investment? Because there are a few players in that space. So I just want us to look outside of Lagos, where the money is, or where it appears the money is, to other states, outside of the Southwest perhaps as well.
All right.
Can I take a shot at that?
Please.
So it's interesting to note that a lot of state governments are outrightly banning two-wheelers and three-wheelers from their capital cities. And it's largely because these assets or mode of transportation appear to be high risk in nature. And as you move away from the state capitals, right, and outside Lagos, the bigger consideration then becomes purchasing power, because that purchasing power reduces drastically as you move. However, the need to move does not change regardless of the location that you find yourself. What I think we need to do is to start putting in place proper infrastructure. Now, digital infrastructure that will support mobility, right? As a regulator, if my concern is I do not know the bike operator or the three-wheeler operator, if identity is the problem, then solve the problem, as opposed to outrightly banning that entire class of assets, because how are the people supposed to move? Also, we often think that the wallet size for transactions in all of these places, we often think that they are significantly lower than Lagos. Yes, for certain services and for certain products, but you'll be shocked to realize that they will match Lagos dollar for dollar if you give them service. I give an example. I did some survey in Akure. I grew up in Akure, and I used to take a cab for 30 naira. 2017 or 2018, that was at the beginning of my journey in mobility, and I sat with a cab driver in Akure. They had increased fares to 50 naira. So I was asking him, how much do you make per day? So he started breaking it down. I will pay union, I will pay delivery. This is what I'm supposed to take home. This is what I will spend on fuel. It amounted to about 10,000 naira. I'm like, sorry, here? By the way, the longest road in Akure probably is about maybe Admiralty Way. It's a small space. Then I asked, like, how many cabs do you have here? Then he said 3,000. And my head did the numbers. You're saying this small space throws out about 3 million naira daily in transport. And it formed an opinion in me to say, first, we need to get off the hype of Lagos, thinking that Lagos is the only place. As you get out of Lagos, yes, the risk perception is higher, but we need to be able to create and design products that fit these places.
Yeah.
People need to move at every location.
As mobility intersects with energy, fintech, and climate, what ecosystem-wide partnerships do you believe are still missing?
I think I'm tired of the government. And and sometimes when we look at that conversation, I think we don't add the nature of who we are as Nigerians. We don't add it to the mix, right? We are risk averse. I dare say Nigeria and Nigerians are the only ones that will put up an ad, ask you for an innovation, an innovative product, and when you are done presenting, the next question they will ask you, where has it been used before? So except someone, first of all, breaks the ice, someone has to take the risk first, and everybody jumps on the wagon. I think that also to scale it down to mobility, right? There is really no playbook for mobility. The best of our brains are not in transportation sector, right? So we are winging it along. It's vibes and inshallah, right? As you're going. And one of the things I saw in the last 2.5 years, the number of phone calls I receive from different people trying to do the same thing. On any given day, I can count at least 3 or different 4 messages from someone who has a fintech product trying to do collection in mobility space. Like, yo, the last person I spoke to is doing the same thing you are trying to do, right? And ever since I met Uncle,
Really?
you're not getting out of that. Ever since I met Uncle, right, I've made several introductions, right? I've made several introductions with you. I've introduced the both of you. What am I trying to do? Basically, let's work together. Because here's the thing. We all have different strengths. And I do not think a single entity can realistically take on this entire thing.
Yeah.
I think we need to get to a place where we are comfortable and secure enough to stay with what we are great at and trust that the counterparty we're on the table with would also stay with what they are great at, so that the combination of our expertise can unlock a better proposition for everybody. So I think we should start with ourselves. Government will join us, I believe so, at some point, if we are able to come up with something so compelling. I mean, we've seen what the guys in the fintech space did. They broke the back of the traditional banking institution.
What's your final word on this?
Quality of service. And I think it rests on the driver. Either it's a two-wheeler, a three-wheeler, a four, whatever wheeler, right? If that person fulfilling service for you, if the experience you get from that person is negative, then as the end user, you are less incentivized to engage with that service.
Thank you.
So I think it is extremely important, and it's a conversation we don't have enough. Look at all the numbers, all the investment that has gone into everything we're talking about. Who is thinking about the driver?